The morning sun painted the sky orange over New Haven Colony. Children laughed as they ran through the town square, their voices echoing off the simple buildings that made up their peaceful home. Minjun kicked a ball to his friend Hee-jin, who caught it with a giggle. Sokwu chased after Daun while Jong-soo sat reading under a tree, occasionally looking up to smile at his friends. New Haven was everything the colonists had dreamed of when they first arrived 15 years ago. Clean air, fertile soil, and most importantly, peace. The children had never known war or violence. Their biggest worry was finishing homework or avoiding chores. Minjun, come help me with this puzzle, called Hee-jin from her spot near the fountain. She had spread out colorful pieces on a blanket, trying to build a picture of Earth's old cities. In a minute, Minjun replied, still kicking the ball with Sokwu. We're almost done with our game. Daun ran over to Jong-soo and peered at his book. Stories about space explorers, Jong-soo said with a grin. They discover new worlds and meet friendly aliens. Sounds boring, Daun teased, but she sat down next to him anyway. The 5 children had grown up together like siblings. Their mothers often joked that they shared one brain between them, always getting into trouble together, and always looking out for each other. A shadow passed overhead. The children looked up to see 3 large ships descending from the sky. Unlike the small transport ships that sometimes visited, these were dark and covered in weapons. Those look different, Sokwu said quietly. Adults began gathering in the square, worried expressions on their faces. The children's mothers appeared quickly, reaching for their kids with protective arms. Kim So-young wrapped her arms around Minjun. Stay close to me, she whispered. Park Mina pulled Hee-jin to her side while Lee Eun-ji gathered Seokwu close. Choi, Young-hee, and Jung Soo-jin did the same with Da-eun and Jong-soo. The ships landed with a loud thud that shook the ground. Armored soldiers poured out, their weapons gleaming in the sunlight. They moved with military precision, surrounding the colonists before anyone could react. A tall alien emerged from the lead ship. His blue skin was marked with scars, and his 4 eyes glowed red with anger. The colonists recognized him as a Zephyrian, one of the Galactic Empire's most aggressive species. I am Commander Zextar of the Imperial 7th Fleet, he announced, his voice booming across the square. This colony is suspected of supporting human rebels. That's not true, said Mayor Chen, stepping forward with his hands raised. We're peaceful farmers. We have no weapons, no military. Zextar's upper eyes narrowed, while his lower ones scanned the crowd. All human colonies are potential threats. Your species breeds violence and chaos wherever it goes. Please, So-young said, her voice steady despite her fear. These are innocent people. We've never caused any trouble. Innocence is a luxury the Empire cannot afford. Zextar replied coldly. His gaze fell on the 5 children huddled with their mothers, especially when dealing with future human warriors. The mothers instinctively moved in front of their children, but the Imperial soldiers pushed them aside with the butts of their weapons. No, Mina screamed as soldiers grabbed Hee-jin. She's just a child. They're all children. Yoon-ji cried, as they took Sokwu from her arms. The other mothers struggled against the soldiers holding them back as their children were dragged to the center of the square. Minjun, Hee-jin, Sokwu, Da-eun, and Jong-soo huddled together, tears streaming down their faces. Mama, Da-eun called out, reaching toward Young-hee. I'm here, baby, Young-hee whispered, fighting against the soldiers holding her. I'm right here. Zextar walked around the frightened children like a predator circling prey. Let this be a lesson to all human colonies, he announced. The Empire will not tolerate the existence of future rebels. They're innocent, Mayor Chen pleaded. They've never hurt anyone. Today they are children, Zextar said, drawing his weapon. Tomorrow, they would be soldiers fighting against Imperial rule. The mothers screamed and fought against their captors, but the soldiers held them tight. So Young's eyes met Min Jun's across the square, and she saw his lips form the word, Mama, one last time. The energy weapons fired in unison. 5 bright flashes lit up the square, and then silence fell like a heavy blanket. The children lay still on the ground, their laughter forever silenced. Record this, Zextar ordered his soldiers. Broadcast it to every human world. Let them know what happens to colonies that dare to exist without imperial permission. The mothers had stopped struggling. They knelt on the ground where the soldiers released them, staring at their children with empty eyes. Tears fell silently down their faces, but they made no sound. Clean this up, Zextar commanded, turning back toward his ship. We leave in 10 minutes. As the Imperial ships lifted off and disappeared into the sky, the colonists slowly gathered around the 5 small bodies. The mothers sat beside their children, each one holding a tiny hand that would never wave at them again. The other colonists tried to offer comfort, but what words could heal such a wound? They had all watched helplessly as their children's future was stolen in an instant. As night fell, the 5 mothers sat together in So Young's kitchen. They had not spoken since the ships left. Their eyes were red from crying. But now, they stared at the table with empty expressions. They think we're just farmers, So Young finally whispered. They have no idea who they just made enemies of, Mina said quietly. Yunji's hands trembled as she spoke. My daughter will never grow up because of that monster. Our babies are gone, Younghee said, her voice breaking. Our beautiful, innocent babies. Sujin stood up slowly and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. I gave up war to raise Jiangsu in peace. I wanted him to never know violence. We all did, So Young said. We thought our fighting days were over. They were, Mina said, standing as well. But Commander Zextar just started them again. The 5 women looked at each other across the kitchen. For 15 years, they had been simple colonist mothers. Before that, they had been something very different. The ghost of Kepler Station, Yunji said quietly, looking at So Young. The Iron Hammer, Younghee said, nodding at Mina. The Mind Breaker. The Silent Death. The Fleet Killer, Sujin whispered, naming each of them in turn. We buried those names when we came here, So Young said. Tonight we dig them up, Mina replied. Outside, the stars looked down on New Haven Colony, where 5 legendary human generals had just lost the only things in the universe they loved more than peace. 3 days after the funeral, So Young sat alone in her house, staring at Minjun's empty bed. The toy ships he loved to play with still sat on his desk, frozen in the middle of an imaginary battle he would never finish. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mina stood outside, her face pale but determined. We need to talk, Mina said simply. Within an hour, all 5 mothers gathered in So Young's living room. The silence stretched between them until Yunji finally spoke. I made some calls last night, she said quietly. To people from the old days. What kind of calls? Younghee asked. The kind that could get us ships, weapons, and soldiers. Sujin leaned forward. The Empire killed our children and broadcast it across the galaxy. They want other human worlds to see what happens when you don't bow to them. Then let's give them a different kind of lesson, Mina said, her voice growing harder. Let's show them what happens when you hurt a human mother. So Young stood up and walked to her computer. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, typing in passwords she had not used in 15 years. The screen flickered to life, showing star charts and military data. My intelligence network is still active, she said, without turning around. Most of my old contacts think I'm dead, but the access codes still work. Information flowed across the screen: Imperial fleet positions, supply routes, communication channels, and personnel files. So Young's eyes moved quickly as she absorbed details that had taken her years to gather during the war. Commander Zextar is based on the Imperial station at Rigel Prime, she reported. He commands 3 battle cruisers and reports directly to Admiral Vor of the 7th Fleet. I know Vor, Sujin said grimly. I destroyed half his fleet at the Battle of Titan's Edge. He's been hunting me for 10 years, not knowing I was raising a son on a peaceful colony. Mina had her own computer open now, scrolling through contact lists and supply catalogs. My weapons dealers are still in business. They owe me favors from the Proxima campaign. How many favors? Young-hee asked. Enough to arm a small fleet, Mina replied. Maybe a large one, if I call in everything. Yoon-ji was making her own calls, using a secure communication device she had hidden in her basement. Familiar voices answered. People who had served under her during the war. Colonel Martinez. This is the Mind Breaker, she said into the device. I need to know if you still have contacts in the mercenary guilds. The voice on the other end went silent for a long moment. General Lee, but you're supposed to be dead. Everyone. General Lee. I was retired. Yoon-ji corrected. Now, I'm not. Young-hee had disappeared into her garage and returned with a large metal case. Inside were weapons, communication gear, and identity cards from a dozen different aliases. My special operations network went underground after the peace treaty, she explained. They've been waiting for orders for 15 years. And now they have them, Sujin said, looking up from her own computer. I found our first target, the Imperial Supply Depot at Nexus Point. It feeds the entire 7th Fleet. So Young pulled up the tactical data on Nexus Point. The space station hung in empty space between 2 solar systems, heavily defended and constantly busy with supply ships. 48 defensive platforms, she read aloud. 200 Imperial guards, and a rotating schedule of patrol ships. I can get us past the defenses, Young-hee said, studying the station layout. My people specialize in impossible infiltrations. I can handle the patrol ships, Sujin added. Give me 6 months, and I'll have a fleet that can take on anything the Empire sends. 6 months? Mina asked. What about Zextar? What about justice for our children? Justice takes time, So Young said calmly. Revenge can be rushed, but justice must be perfect. Over the following weeks, the 5 mothers transformed from grieving colonists into military commanders once again. They established a hidden base in the asteroid field near New Haven, using mining equipment to hollow out a massive rock and hide their operations. Ships began arriving in small groups. Old soldiers who had served under the legendary generals came out of retirement, drawn by coded messages and whispered rumors. Weapons dealers delivered crates of military equipment. Intelligence agents shared Imperial secrets. So Young stood in the command center they had built inside the asteroid, watching dozens of screens showing fleet movements across the galaxy. Her strategic mind, dormant for 15 years, awakened like a sleeping dragon. The Empire has 3 major supply lines feeding their expansion into human space, she explained to the others. Cut those lines, and their entire offensive collapses. Mina was training soldiers in a converted cargo bay, teaching them the brutal efficiency that had made her famous. Her students were volunteers from across human space, men and women who remembered what the Empire had done to their people. Hit hard, hit fast, and don't leave anyone alive to report our tactics, she instructed. The Empire thinks humans are weak and disorganized. We're going to teach them otherwise. Yoon-ji worked in a smaller room filled with communication equipment. She monitored Imperial broadcasts and planted false information in their networks. Her psychological warfare had once driven an entire alien army to surrender without firing a shot. Fear is a weapon, she told her assistants. Make them afraid of shadows. Make them question every order. Make them wonder if their own commanders are working for us. Young-hee was rarely seen in the base. She led training missions in deep space, teaching special forces teams to infiltrate Imperial ships and stations. Her methods were as silent as they were deadly. The Empire controls space through force, she explained during one of her brief visits. We'll control it through fear. They'll never know when we're coming or where we'll strike next. Sujin had the most visible role, commanding the growing fleet from the asteroid's bridge. Former Imperial ships, captured during the war and hidden for 15 years, emerged from secret bases across human space. Every ship that joins us is a ship the Empire can't use, she told her captains during their daily briefings. We're not just building a fleet. We're taking apart theirs. As their force grew stronger, the mothers never forgot why they fought. In the center of their command room stood 5 small photos. Minjun, Hyejin, Sokwu, Da-un, and Jong-su, smiling and laughing in the New Haven sunshine. They died because the Empire thought human children were future soldiers, So Young said during one of their planning meetings. Let's prove them right. The mothers had spent years learning to nurture life. Now they would spend however long it took learning to take it away from those who had stolen their babies' futures. Commander Zex Tar had awakened 5 sleeping giants. Soon, he would learn what that meant. 6 months after the children died, the Imperial Supply Depot at Nexus Point exploded in brilliant white fire. Admiral Krex Vor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the flames spread across what had been the Empire's most secure facility. His forearms gripped the command rail as reports flooded in from across the sector. Sir, we've lost contact with Nexus Point completely, his communications officer reported. No survivors detected. How many ships were docked there? Krex Vor demanded. 47 supply vessels, plus the permanent garrison, came the reply. Total personnel lost, approximately 3,000. Krex Vor's eyes narrowed. The depot had been considered impossible to attack, protected by defensive platforms and constant patrols. Yet something had destroyed it so completely that not even debris remained. Any idea who was responsible? He asked. Pirates, sir. At least, that's what intelligence believes. The attack pattern suggests a coordinated strike by multiple small ships. The Admiral turned back to the view screen, where rescue ships searched for survivors they would never find. He had ruled this sector for 20 years, and nothing like this had ever happened before. Double the patrols around all Imperial installations, he ordered, and find out everything you can about these pirates. What Krex Vor didn't know was that the pirates who had destroyed his depot were celebrating their first victory in the hidden asteroid base near New Haven. Perfect execution, So Young announced to the gathered commanders. Young He's teams disabled the defenses exactly on schedule. Sujin's fleet jumped in and destroyed everything before they could send a distress signal. What about casualties on our side? Mina asked. None. Young He reported with quiet satisfaction. My people got in and out without being detected. The Empire never knew what hit them. None. None. The mothers had planned the Nexus Point operation with the precision that had once made them legends. Every detail had been calculated. Every possible problem anticipated and solved. This is just the beginning, Yunji said, monitoring Imperial communications. They're confused and angry, but they still don't know who they're fighting. Over the following weeks, 3 more Imperial facilities disappeared in fire and silence. A weapons factory on Kepler 7 exploded during the night shift. A fuel depot near the outer rim simply vanished, leaving only empty space where 100 ships had been refueled. A communications relay in the Meridian system went dark, cutting off Imperial contact with 12 worlds. Each attack was different, but all bore the same hallmarks: perfect planning, overwhelming force, and no survivors to tell the story. In his command center on Rigel Prime, Admiral Krex Vor studied star charts covered in red markers, showing Imperial losses. The pattern made no sense. The attacks came from different directions, used different tactics, and struck different types of targets. It can't be random pirates, he muttered to his staff. This level of coordination requires military training. Commander Zex Tar stood beside the Admiral, his blue skin darker with worry. As the officer responsible for the sector where the attacks had started, he was under increasing pressure to find answers. "Perhaps it's the human rebels we've been hunting," he suggested. "They might have more resources than we thought." Humans?" Krexvor scoffed. "They're farmers and merchants. They don't have the ability to plan operations like this." But privately, the Admiral was beginning to wonder. His intelligence officers had found traces of human technology at the attack sites, and the tactical patterns reminded him of strategies he had seen during the war with humanity 10 years ago. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a broadcast from an unknown source. It's being transmitted to every Imperial world in the sector." "Put it on screen," Krexvor ordered. The display flickered, then showed the image of a human woman with cold, determined eyes. She spoke in a calm, clear voice that carried across space to every Imperial ship and station. "People of the Galactic Empire," Yunji said from her hidden broadcast station, "you have been told that humans are weak, that we exist only at your mercy. Recent events prove otherwise." The Admiral's blood ran cold as he recognized the woman on the screen. "You killed 5 innocent children on New Haven Colony," Yunji continued. "You executed them in public to frighten other human worlds. Instead, you have awakened something you cannot control." Quote, "That's General Li Unji," Krexvor whispered. "The Mindbreaker. But she's supposed to be dead." "We are the mothers of those children," Yunji said, her voice growing harder. "We gave up war to raise them in peace. Now, we will bring war to every Imperial world until justice is served." The broadcast ended, leaving the Imperial Command Center in stunned silence. "Get me everything we have on the human generals from the war," Krexvor ordered. "All of them." Within hours, files appeared on his screen showing 5 women who had once terrorized Imperial forces across the galaxy. Kim So-young, the strategic genius who had won impossible battles. Park Mina, whose ground forces had never been defeated. Li Unji, who could break enemy morale without firing a shot. Choi Young-hee, the Special Forces commander who had assassinated 3 Imperial governors. Young Soo-jin, whose naval victories had cost the Empire hundreds of ships. All 5 had disappeared after the peace treaty, presumed dead or retired. Now they were back, and they had spent 15 years building new identities as simple colonist mothers. They were on New Haven. Zextar realized with growing horror. "Those women I saw, crying over the dead children, they were the ghost mothers." "The what?" Krexvor demanded. "That's what Imperial soldiers used to call them during the war," Zextar explained. "They said the 5 generals were like angry ghosts, appearing from nowhere to destroy our forces, and vanishing before we could respond." The Admiral sank into his command chair as the full scope of their situation became clear. They weren't fighting random pirates or untrained rebels. They were at war with 5 of the most dangerous military minds in the galaxy, driven by grief and powered by a mother's love. "How many ships do we have in this sector?" he asked quietly. 57 vessels of various classes," his aide reported. "It won't be enough," Krexvor said. "Contact Imperial Command. Tell them we need reinforcements immediately." "How many ships should I request, sir?" The Admiral looked at the photos of the 5 generals on his screen, remembering battles from years ago when these women had crushed Imperial forces twice their size. "All of them," he said. "Request every available ship in the Imperial fleet." But even as he gave the order, Krexvor knew it might not be enough. The ghost mothers were back, and they were coming for the man who had killed their children. In the hidden asteroid base, the 5 women watched Imperial communications with grim satisfaction as panic spread through enemy ranks. "They remember us," Mina observed. "Good," So-young replied, studying fleet movements on her tactical display. "Fear will make them stupid. Stupid enemies make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, Young-hee added quietly. We'll be ready. The war for New Haven's children had truly begun. Commander Zextar stood in the war room of his personal cruiser, surrounded by star charts and tactical displays. 3 months had passed since the identity of his enemies had been revealed, and the situation was growing worse every day. Report, he demanded, as his officers gathered around the central table. 6 more Imperial installations have been destroyed this week, Captain Vexiel reported. The humans are becoming bolder. Their attacks are larger and more frequent. How many ships have joined their fleet? Zextar asked. Intelligence estimates between 60 and 80 vessels, another officer replied. But they appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. Our tracking systems can't follow them. Zextar slammed his fist on the table. For months, he had been hunting the human mothers, but they remained invisible. His forces found only empty space where intelligence reports placed enemy ships. They're using the old smuggling routes, Admiral Krexvor said, entering the room with a grim expression. The ghost mothers know every hidden path through this sector. Then we'll force them into open battle, Zextar declared. I'm tired of chasing shadows. Krexvor activated a holographic display showing Imperial fleet positions. I've received approval for Operation Cleansing Fire. We're going to sweep every human world in this sector and force the rebels to defend their people. Sir, Captain Vexiel interrupted. Imperial Command has also approved my special mission. They want me to capture the human leaders alive if possible. The Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. What kind of special mission? We've identified a weakness in the human fleet, Vexiel explained, bringing up detailed scans. They use a hidden refueling station in the asteroid belt near the gas giant Kronos. If we can set a trap there, we might capture the ghost mothers themselves. It's too dangerous, Krexvor warned. These women have spent 40 years fighting our forces. They won't fall for a simple trap. But Zextar was already studying the proposed battle plan. His pride had been wounded by months of defeat, and the chance to face his enemies directly was too tempting to refuse. We'll use the civilian transport ship, Mercy's Hope, he decided. Fill it with explosives and send it toward the refueling station with a fake distress signal. When the humans board it to help the civilians, we'll spring the trap. And if they see through our deception? Krexvor asked. Zextar's smile was cold and cruel. Then we'll destroy them all and find new enemies to hunt. 3 days later, the fake transport ship drifted through space near Kronos, broadcasting emergency signals. Hidden behind the gas giant's moons, Zextar waited with 12 Imperial warships. Contact on sensors, his tactical officer reported. 3 human vessels approaching the transport. Just 3 ships? Zextar asked, disappointed. I expected the entire rebel fleet. Perhaps they're being cautious, sir. Or perhaps they know exactly what we're doing, said a new voice from the bridge entrance. Zextar spun around to see 5 women walking onto his bridge, flanked by armed soldiers who had somehow appeared without triggering any alarms. His own crew stood frozen at their posts. Weapons trained on them by invisible enemies. Impossible, he breathed. The security systems would have detected any boarding party. Not mine, Young-hee said with a quiet smile. My people have been on your ship for 6 hours. We've been listening to your plans and watching you prepare your trap. How did you find us? Zextar demanded, his hand moving toward his weapon. We didn't find you, So Young corrected, her eyes cold as space. We led you here. The refueling station was bait. We wanted to meet the alien who murdered our children. Mina stepped forward, and Zextar saw the rage burning in her eyes. Did you think we would run forever? Did you think we would hide while you planned to kill more innocents? You're surrounded by my fleet, Zextar said, trying to regain control. Surrender now, and I might let your people live. Your fleet? Yunji asked, activating a communication device. Show him. Sujin. The bridge's main screen flickered to life, showing the space around Kronos. Where 12 Imperial warships had been hiding, only debris fields remained. Human vessels moved between the wreckage like sharks among the ruins. It took 30 minutes to destroy your entire task force. Sujin's voice came through the speakers. Your admiral managed to escape, but barely. Zextar stared at the screen in shock. His carefully planned ambush had become a slaughter, and he hadn't even known the battle was happening. How? He whispered. Because we're not farmers playing at war, So Young said quietly. We're soldiers who became mothers. Then, lost everything that made us want peace. Young-hee moved to the communications console and began typing rapidly. I'm uploading our personal files to your ship's computer. Every battle we've fought, every enemy we've defeated, every impossible victory we've achieved. Why? Zextar asked. So you'll understand exactly who you made an enemy of when you killed our babies, Mina replied. The computer screens around the bridge filled with military records. Battle reports from across the galaxy showing the 5 women's legendary careers. Victory after victory against impossible odds. Strategies so brilliant they were taught in military academies. Campaigns so devastating they ended wars. The Ghost of Kepler Station, Zextar read from So Young's file, defeated the 3rd Imperial Fleet, using only 12 ships. The Iron Hammer, he continued, looking at Mina, conquered 6 fortified worlds in 3 months. The Mind Breaker. The Silent Death. The Fleet Killer, he whispered, recognizing each woman's reputation. Now do you understand what you've done? Yunji asked. You didn't just kill 5 children. You declared war on 5 of humanity's greatest military minds. The Empire will never surrender to terrorists, Zextar said, but his voice lacked conviction. We don't want the Empire to surrender, So Young replied calmly. We want justice. We want the man who murdered our children to face the consequences. You want me. Zextar realized. Yes. All 5 women, said together. Young-hee's soldiers moved to restrain Zextar as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Imperial reinforcements were approaching, responding to the battle near Kronos. Your rescue is arriving, Mina observed. But they're too late to save your fleet. This isn't over, Zextar snarled as the soldiers secured his hands. Admiral Krex Vor will hunt you to the ends of space. Let him come, Sujin's voice crackled through the speakers. We have a message for him too. As Imperial ships arrived to find only wreckage and empty space, they received a transmission from the Ghost Mothers. The message was simple and direct. We have Commander Zextar, So Young's voice announced. In 7 days, he will face trial on New Haven Colony for the murder of 5 innocent children. Any attempt to rescue him will result in his immediate execution. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial Rescue Force with a choice: retreat and let their commander face justice, or attack and guarantee his death. In the hidden asteroid base, the 5 mothers watched their prisoner with cold satisfaction. For months, they had hunted him across the galaxy. Now he would answer for what he had taken from them. Justice, Yunji said quietly. Finally, justice for our babies. But they all knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would never let one of their commanders be tried by humans. No matter what crimes he had committed, the real war was about to begin. 7 days after Zextar's capture, the largest Imperial fleet in history approached New Haven Colony. Admiral Krex Vor commanded over 200 warships, the entire strength of the 7th Fleet plus reinforcements from across the Empire. This ends today, he announced to his assembled captains. The human terrorists will release Commander Zextar or watch their colony burn. On the surface of New Haven, colonists watched the sky fill with enemy ships. But instead of panic, they felt a strange calm. The 5 mothers had returned to their world, bringing with them a fleet of their own. How many ships do we have? Mayor Chen asked So Young as they stood in the town square where the children had died. Enough, she replied simply. watching human vessels take defensive positions around the planet. The truth was, their fleet numbered only 60 ships against the Empire's 200. But the mothers had learned long ago that numbers alone did not win battles. Admiral Krexvor, So Young spoke into her communicator. This is General Kim, So Young, of New Haven Colony. So you finally show yourself, Ghost, Krexvor's voice crackled back. I've been hunting you for 15 years. And now you found me. So Young replied. Are you ready for what comes next? Release Commander Zextar immediately, or I will destroy your entire colony, the Admiral demanded. Zextar murdered 5 innocent children in this very square, So Young said coldly. He will face trial before the people he wronged. The Empire does not recognize human justice, Krexvor shot back. Surrender now, or face annihilation. The communication ended, and both fleets prepared for battle. But as Imperial ships moved into attack formation, something unexpected happened. Ships began appearing from hyperspace all around them. Sir, we're detecting massive reinforcements, Krexvor's tactical officer reported. Human vessels, jumping in from all directions. How many? The Admiral demanded. 500 ships and counting, came the stunned reply. On New Haven's surface, Sujin smiled as she watched the tactical display. Every human world in this sector just sent us their defense fleets. Turns out people don't like child killers. More than that, Yunji added, monitoring communications. 3 alien species have sent ships to support us. The Empire has made a lot of enemies over the years. Mina was coordinating ground defenses, but she paused to look up at the sky. Our babies brought us together in death, the same way they brought us joy in life. The space battle began with a fury that lit up the darkness between stars. Imperial ships, disciplined and well-armed, fought with the desperation of cornered beasts. Human vessels, outnumbered but not outmatched, struck with the precision of surgeons. Sujin commanded the naval battle from her flagship, using tactics she had perfected over decades of warfare. Split their formation, she ordered her captains. Force them to fight on multiple fronts. Young-hee's special forces teams, hidden throughout the Imperial fleet since before the battle began, struck at crucial moments. Power systems failed, weapons misfired, and command ships found themselves isolated from their escorts. The silent death strikes again, Admiral Krexvor muttered, as his 3rd command ship in an hour exploded around him. He transferred his flag to another vessel, but he knew the battle was already lost. On the ground, Commander Zextar sat in chains in the same spot where he had murdered the 5 children. Colonists gathered around him in a circle, their faces hard with judgment. You called them future soldiers, an old woman said, pointing at the memorial where flowers marked 5 small graves. They were future doctors, teachers, artists, and parents. You stole their dreams because you were afraid of what they might become. I followed imperial law, Zextar replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Your law says human children deserve to die, So Young said, standing before him. Our law says murderers must answer for their crimes. Mina, Unji, Yoonghee, and Sujin joined So Young, forming a semicircle around the alien who had destroyed their world. Above them, the space battle raged on, but their attention was focused entirely on this moment. Do you remember their names? So Young asked quietly. What? Zextar looked confused. The children you killed, do you remember their names? Zextar stared at the ground. They were just humans. I don't remember. Min Jun, So Young said, her voice carrying across the square. He wanted to be a pilot like his mother. Heijin, Mina continued. She loved puzzles and always helped younger children. Sokwu, Yunji added. He collected rocks and knew the name of every star in the sky. Da-un, Younghee said softly. She wanted to be a teacher and help children learn. Jongsu, Sujin finished. He read stories about brave explorers and dreamed of finding new worlds. Tears fell from the mothers' eyes as they spoke their children's names aloud. Around them, the colonists bowed their heads in memory of 5 innocent lives cut short. Those were their names, So Young said to Zextar. Those were their dreams. That was what you destroyed when you decided they were too dangerous to live. In space above, the Imperial fleet was collapsing. Ships exploded one by one. As human forces pressed their advantage, Admiral Krex Vor's flagship, surrounded and outgunned, finally sent a surrender signal. "This is Admiral Krex Vor," his voice came through the speakers in the colony square. "I surrender my fleet to human forces. I request mercy for my remaining crews." So Young looked up at the sky where the battle was ending, then back at Zextar. "Your admiral is asking for mercy. The same mercy you showed our children." "Please," Zextar whispered. "I was following orders." "So were we," Mina replied coldly. "Our orders came from our hearts. Your orders came from fear and hatred." The trial was swift and fair, with testimony from witnesses and evidence presented clearly. Zextar was found guilty of murder and crimes against innocent life. His sentence was carried out at sunset, in the same place where the children had died. As the mothers stood over Zextar's grave, they felt a strange emptiness. Justice had been served, but their children were still gone. "Is it over?" Young-hee asked quietly. "The fighting is over," So Young replied. "But the healing will take time." Around them, New Haven Colony was rebuilding. Children played in the square again, their laughter mixing with the sound of construction. The memorial to Minjun, Haijin, Seokwoo, Da-eun, and Jong-soo stood at the center, reminding everyone of the price of peace. The Imperial surrender had been complete. The 7th Fleet was disbanded, its ships and personnel scattered across the galaxy, with orders never to return to human space. Admiral Krex Vor himself signed a treaty recognizing human colonies' right to exist without Imperial interference. "The other alien species are talking about forming an alliance," Eun-ji reported during one of their evening meetings. "They want protection from the Empire, and they want us to lead it," Sujin added. "The Ghost Mothers have become symbols of resistance across the galaxy." "What do we do now?" Mina asked. "We're soldiers without a war, mothers without children." So Young looked out the window at children playing under the evening sky. Their laughter reminded her of her son's voice, but it no longer brought only pain. "We protect them," she said simply. "All of them. Every child on every world who might face what our babies faced." The 5 mothers had begun their war for revenge, but they ended it as protectors. The legend of the Ghost Mothers spread across the stars, warning all who would harm the innocent that somewhere in space, 5 women waited with the patience of eternity and the fury of broken hearts. Their children were gone, but their legacy would live forever in the safety of children they would never meet, on worlds they would never see. In the town square of New Haven, 5 small graves were visited daily by 5 women who had learned that a mother's love could move fleets, topple empires, and change the fate of the galaxy itself. Justice for Minjun, Haejin, Seokwoo, Da-eun, and Jong-soo was complete. Now their mothers would ensure that no other children would ever suffer the same fate. The Ghost Mothers watched over them all.